Closet, a Todd Mills mystery. Book 1. Author R.D. Zimmerman. Publisher Scribble Pub, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Narrator Eric Aust. Chapter 11. Listen, lunch was enough, Todd said as they rode the elevator downward. You don't have to take me home. Like hell I don't, replied Janice. Are you still mad? About the 50 plucked pubic hairs? Nah, just a tad sore. I'm sorry I forgot to tell you. They'd eaten in an empty corner of a cafeteria, Todd not finishing the small tuna sandwich, and now the elevator halted 3 levels beneath the street, and the doors eased open into the small lobby of a vast underground parking garage. Janice stepped out first, briefcase in hand, her high heels clipping along. Todd hurried after her, suggesting, I could just grab a cab and go over and pick up my car. Think again, sweetheart. You ain't got no vehicle. Todd stopped, put his hand to his forehead. What the hell was she saying? Todd, said Janice over her shoulder as she led the way out of the small lobby and between 2 cars. You're out of the slammer, but your car isn't. For the time being, the police have your Cherokee. It's nothing serious. You don't have anything to worry about. They just want to check it out. No big deal. You don't have a second car, do you? I used Michael's when mine was in the shop. Well, you can forget that for right now. You have to stay away from Michael's place and his things, including his car, for a while. His apartment is still a sealed crime scene. She thought for a second and added, Remind me to check out on this, but you might even have to get permission from his next of kin to go into his place. Isn't that me? Aren't I next of kin? Not legally. But we were pretty much living together, and I have a lot of stuff over there. Clothes, books. I think I even left my checkbook in the bedroom. Sorry, you weren't married. Not that you could have been. That being against the law for 2 people of the same sex in this great nation of ours. She turned down a row of cars headed for hers, and her voice, thick with judgment, said, Of course, if you and Michael had bothered to register as domestic partners, the legal status between the 2 of you would be much better. But we didn't bother to do that now, did we? No. Michael had wanted to register when the city made it legally possible several years ago. But to do so would have been an open public process, and how could Todd do that? That gossip columnist over at the Tribune could have picked up on it, and then what about his career? So Todd had nixed that one, but Michael had kept pressing, suggesting another symbol. Say, the exchange of rings. Todd had tripped on that ideal as well, asking what kind of ring, a gold wedding band or something totally different. Michael said it didn't matter, just something, a symbol of their commitment. And then Todd had stalled over the design. Bullshit, thought Todd. He'd stalled because he'd been worried what people at the station would think about him wearing a new ring and what it might imply if it had even slightly looked like a wedding band. He'd hesitated on any public symbol of their relationship, and now Michael was gone forever. What an absolute fool Todd had been. He now saw that so completely. Obsessed by what others would think, when all that mattered in the end was how deeply he cared for someone and how that someone had reached into his heart and said, yes, we are good. Together the 2 of us are good. Well, Michael had been better than Todd, far wiser and infinitely less uptight. Janice, you go back to your office. You've got work to do. I'll just take your car. Janice stopped next to a van and turned, studying him out of the corner of her eye. He glanced away, wondering if Janice, the purveyor of truth, might see through him. Would she approve? Pardon me, Todd, she began, one hand on her slender hip. But you look like shit. Your hair's shooting this way and that. Your eyes are red and puffy. Your clothes are wrinkled. You need to go home and get some rest, and that's where I'm taking you. Home. And I want to escort you all the way there, just so that I know you make it. Janice, Have you realized that there might be some journalist waiting at your building, hoping to get a word or a photo of you? She paused. Well, have you? You're good bait. And this makes a great story. I wouldn't rule out Newsweek or Time going after this story. Don't forget how the media swarmed over OJ. What? None of this had even occurred to him. That's why it would be good to have your lawyer with you. Let me remind you, this is big, juicy stuff to Middle America. A queer TV journalist arrested for killing his secret lover. Sounds like a movie of the week, doesn't it? She shook her head. Dear God, don't I sound ridiculous? Middle America, I mean, what is it? And who are they? A coffee clatch consisting of all our mothers waiting to pass moral judgment. Look it. Todd, here we are. The two of us, in an underground garage smack dab in the middle of the Midwest. If this isn't Middle America, where is it? Better yet, if we aren't part of it, who is? Janice, really, there's no need for it. Okay, out with it. With what? Listen, I'm not some dumb old dyke. You're not planning on going home. Just yet, are you? No. You don't want to go to the station, do you? That's not where you're going, is it? As your lawyer and your friend, I'd advise against that right now. You've been suspended with pay. Don't forget, it really would be best if you let me contact them. No, She stared right at him, fear whisking across her face. My God, you're going to see someone else, aren't you? Well, actually, yes. Ah, shit, Todd. You shouldn't have told me that, she said, putting her left hand to her forehead. He watched as she spun on a heel and stormed off toward her car, and then stopped, turned again, and started toward the elevator. Her face was flushed red with fury. Janice, please. As your lawyer, I've got to hear everything. But as your friend, this is exactly what I didn't want to know. He jogged after her, caught her gently by the elbow. She stopped, bowed her head. Couldn't even bear to look at him. What the hell's going on? He asked. Finally, she said, You've got another boyfriend, and you're going to go see him, aren't you? Did you spend the night with this other guy after you and Michael fought? Oh, Christ. Wait until the police find out about this. No, wait until the paper gets hold of it. My God, you're dead meat. They'll make you out to be just another pervert fag. Shit. Why didn't Michael ever put up with you? What did... Janice, there was only Michael, Todd said softly. Only him. I was a jerk about a lot of things, but I knew right from the start that I never needed anyone else. She looked up at him, her own exhaustion showing through, and asked, But then where are you going? I need to see Maggie. Janice gasped and put a hand to her thin lips. Oh, Todd. I won't be able to rest or sleep until I see her. No, of course not. It's not a problem my going there, is it? Legally, I mean. That's why I didn't want to tell you. I've got to see her. Her voice was faint. No, it's okay. She closed her eyes, tried unsuccessfully to hold back several tears. Michael's murder was going to shake up the entire gay community of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Todd knew for Michael's close friends like Janice, however, the tremors would resonate much deeper and much longer. I'm sorry, began Janice. This is too much, all of it. I'm really sorry. Maybe I'm too close to you, and I adored Michael. Maybe I shouldn't be handling this case. Nonsense, he bent forward, kissed her on the cheek. I hate it when people die. I hate being left. Yeah, he said, understanding she was referring to her own tragedy. Thanks for liberating me this morning. Yeah, right, she said as she fumbled through her briefcase, searching for her keys. I can pick you up later this afternoon. No, don't. I'll take the bus, she was quick to add, and keep the car. Don't forget, I still have Julie's Beetle. I'm pretty sure I can get it going. That old orange thing. What was it, 25 years old? Janice's partner, Julie, had it from her college days right up until her death. And yet, even 8 years after Julie's death, Todd knew Janice couldn't sell the Volkswagen with its convertible top. The little thing with the rattly engine just seemed so much like Julie, free-spirited and fun, particularly on a hot summer day with the top folded down, and so it remained in Janice's garage, covered by a couple of old, dingy sheets. Started up not more than 3 or 4 times a year. Janice plucked the car key from her key ring, stuffed it into Todd's palm, and said, I'll call later. See if you need anything like a pizza or ice cream. She kissed him on the cheek. Give my love to her. It was a straight shot out of the city to Lake Minnetonka. The state had recently spent a ridiculous amount of money, nearly $500 million, on not quite 15 miles of concrete, to make it as easy as possible for white folk to flee the city to the wealthiest and most exclusive western suburbs. Todd had never understood that one, why the state would work not to slow the hemorrhage of tax dollars out of the core city, but instead to encourage it. In any case, that afternoon, the smooth, straight highway made Todd's drive simple, even thoughtless. Whisking along in Janice's red Honda Prelude, Todd found himself squinting, for he couldn't take it all in, particularly after the darkness of the jail. The clear, crisp day was just so bright, so beautiful, the fall colors still at their peak of bright gold and orange. It looked so disturbingly heavenly. Just over 20 minutes after he left Janice in the underground garage, Todd pulled off the highway and passed along the edge of Lake Minnetonka, a huge lake that never seemed to quit, only twist and turn. He followed a winding and hilly road lined with trees in multicolored splendor, and then turned down a small lane. Soon he was maneuvering down a familiar narrow drive, strewn with fallen leaves. And then he saw it, the Cape Cod house, perched right on the edge of the lake. Through the collection of shedding oaks and maples, he spotted a number of cars as well. It all appeared so perfect, but of course it wasn't. Not today of all days. A moment later, a frisky golden retriever bounded out of the woods, barking his announcement. When Todd parked and climbed out, the dog came rushing up. "Hi, Pronto," he said, patting the exuberant creature, which had been a gift from Michael 2 years ago. They'd been at the state fair, and Michael was talking about the kids, how upset they were about their parents' separation. And as Michael chowed on a Pronto pup, that peculiar corn dog on a stick, he resolved to get them a golden retriever, just like he had as a boy, in the hopes that it would bring them the same joy. "And I'll recommend they call it Pronto," he'd said with a big laugh. "Absolutely. It's got to be a golden retriever, too. They're such happy dogs." The dog, like Michael, had indeed brought joy to this house. For the parents had gotten back together. The magic hadn't lasted forever, though. The parents had split again, and now they'd been apart for 3 or 4 months. Todd glanced to his left, saw the silver Oldsmobile. At least Rick was here today. He pressed the doorbell, heard small, quick steps, and the door was pulled back by an 8-year-old boy with curly brown hair. As the dog went shooting past them, both into the house, the child stared up at Todd, and his eyes quickly grew huge with fright. In an instant, he was running back into the living room, shouting, "Mom!" "Wait, Jason," Todd called, reaching fruitlessly after him. He hadn't thought about it before. He'd been too tired, but now that he'd seen the fear in Jason's eyes, Todd worried how the others would react. They couldn't possibly think that he'd been involved in any way, could they? Dear God, Todd stood on the threshold, switching his weight from his left foot to his right and back again. Should he have called first? Or maybe not come at all. He put his hand to his forehead. Perhaps he should just turn around, race away. Was this how everyone was going to react to him? Assume he was a killer? A weak voice said, "Todd?" He looked up. Michael's sister, Maggie, stood there, her hair dark brown and curly like Michael's. She was pretty, with brown eyes, a handful of freckles set high on her wide cheeks. Outside of their own homes, there were very few places Todd felt comfortable being openly gay, and this was definitely one of them. Michael and his sister were extremely close. Her rock, she called him, and Todd and he had come here at least several times a month for dinner, a swim, a long talk. Yes, the long talks, while Michael had been out playing catch with his 2 nephews. Todd had often sat on their deck, beer in hand, discussing with Maggie and Rick the traumas of the world. Lately, of course, it had just been Maggie, and lately the subject had been marital bliss, or the lack thereof. Now Michael's little sister stood at the far end of the hall, staring at Todd with red, swollen eyes, and for a long moment he thought she was going to scream at him. He bit his lip. Couldn't move. Didn't know what to say. How was this going to go? "Oh, God, Todd!" she finally said, and started rushing toward him, her hands lifting upward. He hurried forward, embraced her, one hand wrapping around her back, the other up into her hair. All at once he could feel her crying. the sob racking her body, bursting out of her mouth. He bit his lip, clenched his eyes shut, held his pain as deeply and tightly as he could. I loved him. I loved him, Maggie, he managed to whisper. I didn't hurt him. Of course you didn't. We had a fight the night before last. I broke some dishes, he said, clutching her and compulsively confessing, wanting her to know, understanding everything. I think they were your grandmother's. I'm sorry. But the station was going to offer me an anchor position, and Michael said I had to come out to them, or he was going to leave me. He said he wanted to come to the Channel 7 Christmas party, and I just lost it. All the pressure, them and him and me and those fucking Emmys. I couldn't handle it. I just didn't know what people expected of me, but I loved him. I didn't hurt Michael. I never thought you did. She pulled away, wiped her eyes, kissed him once on the cheek. Come on, some friends are here. She raised her eyebrows. Rick's here, too, actually. He's been a big help. The kids are real upset. He sucked it in, all the pain, the fear, the horror. He didn't want to see anyone else besides Maggie. He didn't want to have to put on any pretense, have to hold it together for anyone. Yet, when Maggie wrapped one arm around him and nudged him on, he didn't resist. He let her escort him down the hall and to the edge of the sunken living room, a large space lined on the far side with sliding glass doors that overlooked the lake. As they stood 3 steps above the gathered friends, Maggie whispered into Todd's ear, Trust me, Todd. Everyone knows now. As they should, he thought, his stomach wrenched tighter as they must. Maggie and Rick had been asked not to talk about it before, but suddenly those dark days of secrecy were over. Finished. Forever. Everyone, said Maggie, sniffling. This is Todd, Michael's partner. It was so easy. No one cared. They were Maggie's neighbors and friends. 4 or 5 of them gathered for her support. As they rose and expressed their sorrow and shook his hand, all Todd could think was that he'd been crazy to hide like that, so deeply in the closet. Good God, what had he put Michael through anyway? Who cared about the ratings or career or any of that crap? As these people swarmed around him, as he replied with all the perfunctory remarks, he suddenly wished he'd never gone into television. So much was so clear now. Television had enlarged and broadcast all of his fears, placing all of them out there for judgment. Uncle Michael was going to teach Jason and me to drive the boat next summer. Todd looked down. What was he, 6 or 7? Josh was all boy with an impy twinkle in his eye. Just like Michael. Todd knelt down, roughed the boy's hair, tried to speak, but had to clear his throat, finally saying, Well, he won't be able to, but I'd sure like to. Can I come back when it's warm, and I'll teach you everything that Michael taught me about boats? The child glanced away and nodded. Thanks, said Todd. No sooner had Todd risen than he was faced with his most frequent daytime drink, a glass of mineral water, sporting a wedge of lime. Rick handed it to him and embraced Todd awkwardly, the glass somewhere between the two. I'm so sorry. He was such a great guy. What was Todd supposed to say? He looked at Rick, Michael's brother-in-law, a handsome man with a round face and reddish hair that was receding. He was a burly guy, a jock's jock, always energetic, though now Rick looked exhausted as he stared at the ground, shaking the head. In spite of the trouble Maggie and he were having, Rick and Michael had been close and for years had had a standing monthly racquetball date. Michael was proud of Rick, too, calling his brother-in-law the least homophobic het he knew. I just don't get it, said Rick, staring out the window and at the lake. It just doesn't make any sense. Todd took a sip of the water. No, it sure doesn't. Rick led Todd away from the others, lowered his voice, and volunteered. We saw the papers. I'm sorry it all came out like this. You and Michael. I'm sure the police have been hard on you. It's just so awful. Do you have a good lawyer? Is there anything I can do? I think I'm all set for now. Thanks. My friend Janice is handling the case for the time being. Well, I'm sure it's going to be rough, particularly for a few weeks. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a card. You know, Maggie and I are still having troubles. We talk every day, and I've been over here a lot, but, well, don't forget, you can always reach me at the office. Things are busy, but I'm around. The business is still going well. Oh, gangbusters. Finally, it sure as hell took long enough. You've been working at it for a long time, said Todd. Over 10 years, night and day. Can you believe it? Rick shook his head. Then something like this happens and you realize what's really important. Good God, where's this country going? So much violence. Are any of us safe? No, replied Todd. I suppose we're not. Maggie came up next to him quietly, said, Todd, we need to start making the arrangements. You know, the funeral? Of course. He stared out the windows at the flat blue waters of the lake. His mind flashed on Michael's body. What was the coroner doing to poor Michael this very moment? Todd turned away, felt a wave of nausea tightening his throat. No, he couldn't think about that. I already contacted one place, continued Maggie. The funeral home was used for Mom and Dad, but it's really your decision. Are you up to it? Or would you like me to take care of it all? If in many ways Todd had not given himself fully to Michael in life, if he'd held back out of any one of his myriad of fears, then he wouldn't now. Not in the end. Nothing else mattered, and his pride in Michael rallied and began to surge forward. Of course, he knew better than anyone what Michael would want. Maggie pressed again, asking, Can you handle it? Todd nodded. Oh, yes, absolutely. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.